But you have the wrong accent.
I have the wrong accent. It's
Yeah.
And now we do have some other people here who are not here at the moment. And if I could ask you, can you move that way so you're in the camera so we can see you? Connor, also, if you could move back and just, yeah, that's perfect. Then we see you. Otherwise, it's a shame to not know that you're here. Okay, we've got it. We're being live streamed.
Rita, you're a real life Chanukah miracle. You're muted and yet we can hear you.
It's a miracle. It's a miracle. Welcome, everybody. We do have a few more people here at the Fulksburg Centre who will be joining us in a moment. We lost some of them. They got so excited when they arrived early. They're exploring the premises, I think, and hopefully they'll come in the room. But as those of you who've been joining us regularly in this fantastic series, you know that we like to start on time. The other thing that I have to give apologies before we start on behalf of Rita and Trudy and Bernadette who are here, who planned on the Zoom, who planned to be with us in person all the way through. And was it about an hour and a half ago? We're told it was impossible. Maybe a couple of hours ago, we're told it would be impossible for them to come because of projected disturbances in the old city where they live and the danger of being outside. And this is part of the tragedy, if you like, of the situation in which we're living at the moment, that we can't always all be together as we would like to be together in person. But it is also part of the opportunity that's been created that we can be together on Zoom. And I'm so pleased to see many of our regulars here, and we suspect some more will join us around 5 o'clock when they're used to coming in. And I really am grateful for those of you who managed to do the 4:30 thing and be here on time to join us. We're going to be 4:30 this week and next week. And it's not only because these are the earliest weeks of the year or the shortest weeks of the year in Jerusalem, but because of the festival of Chanukah, when we light the candles as close to sunset as possible, by being earlier, we're actually being more in line with what we need to do. So 2 weeks at 4:30 and then back to our 5 o'clock time until the summer when we go to 6 o'clock. So that praying together in Jerusalem is as close to sunset as it can be. And please God, we will have peace and we will be sitting together in Jerusalem, as they say, this beautiful picture of the old and the young in the streets of Jerusalem, just being able to be together in peace. That's our prayer. I'm here with Rabbi Beth, whom some of you heard speaking to Alon a moment ago. She's going to be part of our panel, but perhaps you'd like to welcome us here. Oh, no, sorry. Oh, there you are. Could you come here to speak into the camera now? Because just welcome us here. Do you want to say anything? You don't have to, but if you'd like to, we'd love to hear from you. If you don't come here, they can't hear you. So I need you to come up to the microphone. Here you are. No, you'll sit there and you'll welcome.
Shalom, welcome. We're so excited to have such an important gathering, especially today, especially for Chanukah, especially in this time here at the Fulksburg Center. And it's such an honor to have you all here. And I see that more people are joining us. And thank you. And I'm looking forward for this tefillah together.
Thank you so much, Nava.
Brings me back to the Tantur days.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So praying together in Jerusalem, as you know, was meeting monthly. We've been doing this for quite a few years now. We've never missed a month. Hannah, I'm looking at Hannah across the table from me. She's been with us when we've been huddling in the rain under a Jaffa Gate, and where we've had dozens of people. I think our largest gathering was 160 people at Tantur. And we've had, prior to Corona, we had fairly significant in-person gatherings. On Corona, since Corona, where we use Zoom, we've had some significant Zoom gatherings. And in this series, where we decided to go weekly in response to the terrible situation in which we found ourselves on October 7th, all of us, because it wasn't that, and this is a point we make every week when we gather, it wasn't that on October 7th, it did change the world for the Holy Land. There's no question about it. But it didn't mean that all other suffering suddenly disappeared. The world's television cameras may have suddenly moved over here, but there are still people suffering in the Ukraine. There's still a war going on there. There are still people suffering from famine and from other wars and from all other sorts of oppression in other parts of the world. And when we gather for praying together in Jerusalem, of course we pray for peace in the Holy Land, but we also pray together for the end of suffering wherever it might be. We'd like to do a quick introduction of those people who have come together at Fuchsberg. Because of the microphone situation, where you're not going to be heard unless you're with me, I'm going to invite anybody who'd like to say hello to come round here now. Come and say hello. We'd love you to say hello, so please do. Come on, Ivor, you come and say hello. Chaim, come and say hello. Come and join us and say who you are. Yes, please come and say hello. Please come and say hello. Not everybody's coming, but at least they will come and the people who would like to can introduce themselves. So Ivor, tell us who you are.
Hi, my name's Ivor Lanza. I made Aliyah 20 years ago. I come from Manchester and London. I'm sort of retired here. My main hobby is playing folk guitar, and I'm playing later tonight. And it's a pleasure to be with you. I hope there's lots of people listening and will stay listening when I sing.
Thank you.
Hello to everyone online. My name is Ruben. I'm a student here at Fuchsberg Conservative Yeshiva, and I'm here tonight because it's a lovely event.
Thank you so much. Come across. Yes, thank you.
Hello. Okay. I'm Ellie. I'm a student also at the Fuchsberg Yeshiva. And yeah, I was just here tonight because it seems like it's going to be great and I'm excited about it.
Thank you so much. And we have other people here. We have Mohammed and Reverend Gillum is due to join us. We hope we will have Christian presence as well a little bit later on. Oops, sorry about the noise. And I'm now going to invite Alon and our panelists. We are so honored to have Bishop William Shomali with us, Professor Sally King with us, and Professor Marcia Hermanson with us on the Zoom. And we have here, as you've already heard, Rabbi Beth Levy. So I'm going to ask Honey whether you could spotlight Alon and the panelists. We have including Beth here. And we will begin our formal teaching. So we need to get Sally and Marcia spotlighted as well as and we can unspotlight Fuchsberg and take the spotlight off Fuchsberg. There we go. That's lovely. And I'm going to hand over to my friend, colleague, and boss in Elijah, Alon Goshen-Gutstein.
What happened to partner? Okay, so let's look at the situation. Let's begin first by greeting everyone. Thank you to all those here, there, and a little bit of everywhere. We have people here from Jerusalem and from Chicago and from DC. And from various parts of the world, Africa, I see people from all over the world here, and Asha Harris, who I've been meaning to reach out to. So happy to see you. I'm planning to call you for some time. There you are. So we were thinking how to frame this, and obviously light and darkness are appropriate both for the festival of Chanukah and for the festival and for the contemporary situation. As my friend William Bishop Shomali pointed out, Christians too light lights at this time. It may not be a mitzvah as we discussed between us, but it's nevertheless part of the period with bringing light. And the question then is, so what does it mean when we think of light? We'll be lighting Chanukah lights very soon. Do we think of the lights as just something physical? Do we think of it as something spiritual? And we're going to have two cycles of conversation amongst the panelists, and I'll I'll probably serve also as a kind of panelist in this as well. And the first cycle, in which I will pretend that I know how to keep time, consists of the following three questions. When you refer to light, what do you have in mind? How literal, how metaphorical? If literal, what are light-related rituals in your tradition? In other words, what do you do that will be equivalent in your tradition to Chanukah lights? If it's something metaphor, what do you mean by it, and what values does it translate into as part of the metaphor? So I'm going to do what Peter often does, which is to go clockwise on my screen, which is totally random. So I have on my screen clockwise, besides me, I've got William, then I've got Marcia, then I have Sally. And we'll follow that with each one of you making your initial contributions. Therefore, I pass the virtual microphone on to my friend of many, many years, who we've seen many, many difficult times together, including this time, and that is William Bishop Shomali.
First of all, I greet all those who are.
William, can you adjust your camera, because we only get half your head. Now you've muted yourself, so we have a full head and no voice.
Now it is okay?
We're getting there, yeah.
Yes, excuse me. I greet all of you, those who are physically present and those who are on Zoom. Thank you for the topic alone, because the topic is very actual, not because only of the Feast of Chanukah and Advent for Christians, but also because of the situation. We need more light, we need more hope, we need more peace, we need more joy in these times when peace, joy, and hope are put down. For us, light is physical and metaphorical. Light is physical. When we say light, we say the sun, the moon, the stars. We say all of that, but it has also a metaphorical meaning for humanity. We agree that light symbolizes peace, joy, science, faith, hope, and all the virtues, while darkness is symbol of atrocities, sins, killing, persecuting. All these things are darkness. Now, the symbolism of light expressed through visible signs exists in our Christian faith, especially during Christmas time. Christmas itself, it is said that it was fixed in the year 336, while the pagans were celebrating the feast of the unconquerable sun. The feast of the unconquerable sun, or undefeated sun, was on the 25th of December. Why that? It is related to the cycle of nature. It is related to the solstice of winter. We know that on the 21st of December, the night is the longer in the year, especially in the northern hemisphere, Europe, and also here in the Middle East. The longest night is in the 21st of December. After that, the day becomes a little bit longer and the night a little bit shorter, and until we reach the equinox, where day and night are equal, on the 21st of March. So the same reason made pagans choose 25 to celebrate the birth of the sun, unconquerable sun, and Christians to celebrate Christmas, because we believe that Jesus, as he said in the gospel, is the light of the world. For this reason, we have a lot of light. We speak up a lot of the light during the Christmas season. Then was added the enlighting of a Christmas tree, but it is not related to the liturgy as I understood from Rabbi alone, while Chanukah lighting is related to the Jewish liturgy. Good to make this distinction. So for this year, for example, the bishops of Jerusalem, because of the situation where the people are suffering, since light is symbol of joy, it was decided that the external celebrations like lighting Christmas tree or lighting the outside of the houses, and also the external celebrations are not practiced this year in solidarity with all those who suffered in the Holy Land, either in Israel or Palestine. There is a lot of suffering on both sides. So how can we celebrate joyfully while people are suffering? So the celebrations are exclusive, only limited to what we celebrate during the liturgy. And we need to pray for peace, we need to pray for each other. So this continues, but not the external celebration. There is something, and I conclude here, there is something very common between Judaism and Christianity for the significance of light. God is the light. God created the light. The word of God in the Psalms means also light, because it gives light to our path and to our steps. We know the direction, we know where to go, because we are enlightened by the word of God. It's a true light. Finally, during the Easter night, we produce a light from hitting two stones together or from another source, in order to signify that the resurrection of Christ, which happened before the beginning of the day. And during the 50 days of Easter until Pentecost, a Paschal candle, big one, is lit in order to say the presence of Christ during the Easter season. This is my contribution to the three first questions, and I thank everyone for listening and sharing.
Well, William, you're remarkable in being ahead of time, which allows me to put the following question to you. If I had to pick one sentence out of your contribution, I would say it is your statement that Jesus is how do you say Jesus is the light? The quote may have been slightly slated to a light or light of the world. What does that mean?
Light means the opposite of sinfulness. It means holiness. Holiness, because we do our actions not hidden, but because we are not ashamed to do good actions, while the bad actions are hidden, or we try them to be hidden. So light is symbol of holiness. So we consider that Jesus, all his life, lived a life of holiness. And also Christians should try to be light of the world. It means they should reflect holiness by their good actions.
Let me push you further. You opened your presentation with a whole series of associations of light. You said peace and joy and wisdom and all kinds of things. And now you're saying holiness. Can you suggest some kind of hierarchy between these different qualities that you referred to at the beginning, and now this very clear statement of
holiness?
Holiness
Is to be holy. It's related to verb to be. The others are related to verb to do actions of goodness, of charity, to be peacemaker. So if I am good, my actions will be good. If I am bad, not holy, my actions will be consequently bad. So it is the relation between holiness and other virtues. It is the relation between to be and to do.
Okay, so the fundamental definition, and this is very helpful, light means holiness, everything is derivative of that. That's very clear. Thank you. we turn to Chicago and to our friend Marcia Hermanson for a Muslim perspective. By the way, I don't see bios going up in the chat. Do we have those bios ready as we usually do, or this is part of a transitioning? So, Tali, do we have bios ready or not?
No.
No. Okay. Next time we will. So Marcia Hermanson is teacher of Islamic Studies at Loyola University in Chicago, and herself a Muslim practitioner, close to Sufi circles, and she's been a source of wisdom for us now over many, many years, beginning with her visit to Jerusalem more than 20 years ago. Marcia.
Well, good morning, everyone, or good evening, good wherever you are. Salam, shalom, peace to all, and happy Hanukkah, and may you be filled with light and peace. So I was asked to speak about Islam and light. Well, what is Islamic? And there are 1.2 billion Muslims in the world, so there's a lot. It's how to speak about this. Well, of course, there is authoritative tradition, and you ask, what is Islamic? The Quran, the scripture, is a major source. Then the model of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and that model is known as the Sunnah. And then there are all kinds of interpretation, legal, mystical, Sufi. Let me start off. I know Alon is interested in making connections and being universal. And light is a universal religious symbol, since it is both something that allows us to see while it is invisible. Therefore, light is, a kind of natural metaphor for the divine. We don't see it, and yet without it, we don't see anything. In Islam, light is largely metaphorical. Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth. So light is identified with God or the divine. And that's of course, a Quranic phrase repeated. The Sunnah, the model and sayings of Muhammad, the Prophet himself is described as having a light, as being Siraj Munir. That means a light bringing torch. And of course, there's a hadith, a report about the Prophet that is much beloved by mystics, that speaks of the Prophet as a primordial light, the Nur Muhammadi, the Muhammadan light. And that is getting very philosophical. It's somewhat like the Christian idea of the Logos, the cosmic being. So that light pre-existed everything in the universe. I'm thinking of Buddhism, maybe the Buddha, the highest Buddha body, the cosmic light is associated with the prophets. But it's not entirely exclusive, this idea of a prophetic light, because the Abrahamic lineage of prophecy is also associated with bringing light or even being light. So the Torah and the gospel in the Quran are said to be sources of Huda and Nur, guidance and light. There's a wonderful prayer of the Prophet, "O Allah, appoint for me a light in my heart, and a light behind me, and a light before me, a light on my right hand, a light on my left, light above me, light below me, light in my countenance and light in my flesh. Increase me in light and appoint for me light. Give me more light, give me more light, give me more light." The Quran also says, "Our Lord, perfect our light for us." So we see, sort of the cosmic light, the divine light, the prophetic light, and the personal light. So yes, unlike Judaism and Christianity, there are no kind of official light rituals in the Islamic tradition, but let's not close the door on that. We have to say something, and I have a few kind of comparative things to say. Yes, lights are used, like the mosque light, and so there's a concrete mosque light. Lighting it is not ritualized, unlike the Hanukkah candles or the lights way back when in the temple. But the mosque light is a powerful symbol. During Ramadan in parts of the Arab world, there's a fanus Ramadan, a Ramadan lantern lighting up homes and even streets. And in the Ottoman and Balkan regions, there are 5 nights of the year known as candle or chandelier nights, kandil, and you can see that word kandil sounds like candle, right? And these are usually associated with nights in the life of the Prophet Muhammad, his birth, for example, or the night of Qadr when he receives the Quran. So where I would go with these kind of regional or cultural examples of celebratory lighting in Muslim cultures is an openness to other religions and traditions. Because probably those Ramadan lanterns and kandils were influenced by the Christian adjacent or mingled Christian traditions in those cultures. And if we go to South Asia, the Muslims of India and Pakistan, for example, there's rituals at Sufi tombs called chirag. Chirag is a lantern or a light. So there's probably some crossover of the Hindu Diwali or the lighting of lights as celebratory. So lighting seems to be somewhere where you get. Now, when I heard the presentation by our dear Christian teacher, I realized that, you're talking about the solstice. So there were 2 connections that I immediately made. One is like that pre-existing culture thing and lighting. So the pagan solstice rituals, and then the Christmas association of the 25th. But also that idea of the winter solstice, and people in the northern hemispheres really feel they need some light and hope, like this association with nature. Well, you may know that the Muslim calendar rotates, right? So the months are 11 days earlier every year. So on the one hand, you have almost a negation of that seasonal ritual, but one might say that the Muslim prayers that are performed at dawn and sunset and so on are the way of Muslims relating to that cycle of the seasons. However, I don't see the light coming in there unless you would say the light of prayer. So I hope I'm not using too much time alone. Do I have 3 or 4 minutes more or 3 because I wanted to say a little bit more about light in the Islamic tradition. I'm good. So there's a famous verse in the Quran called the light verse. Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth. The likeness of his light is a niche in which there is a lamp. The lamp is in a glass, the glass as if it were a shining star kindled from a blessed tree, an olive tree neither of the east nor of the west, whose oil would shine forth even if no fire touched it, light upon light. This is one of the most commented upon passages in the Quran. It's very allegorical. So, of course, God is the light of the universe, but that light upon light, what's the light upon light? So some commentators say it's the Prophet and the Quran. Some say it's the believer's efforts to reach God and God's grace drawing the believer closer and closer. Ecstatic Sufis have said that the light upon light could refer to the lover of God being extinguished in divine realization. So there's this well-known metaphor in Sufi poetry of the moth flying into the candle. There's the candle thing. The moth flying into the candle and being extinguished, right? Annihilation in the self. So what are some of the values Alon wanted us to mention? Values associated with this. Sharing the light, dispersing guidance, activism, seeking and imparting knowledge, finding the truth, coming out from the darkness to the light, enthusiasm, that light, that oil that would catch fire even if no flame touched it. So that just getting ready to get it, if you will, to get enlightenment, and even self-effacement or illumination. So that's my introduction to metaphorical light.
Beautiful, very effective. No time and no need for questions. So with this, we turn to DC. It's Thursday, so Sally's after some difficult days, and we're glad to have her with us. Sally King is Professor Emerita of Buddhist Studies at James Madison University, and we've been hanging out together, I think, at least since 2007, when you were with us in India, no? In Amritsar, so 2006 when we started preparing that project. So by now we've got a relationship and a history, and we're delighted. And just do me a favor, don't upset everything like Buddhists always upset everything and turn everything on its head and leave us all confused. just yeah.
Ongoing jokes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's difficult. No, actually, Alon, I thought you might like this because I felt as I was pulling it together, gosh, this is a lot like Hinduism. And of course, there's some very universal themes you'll be hearing as well. So hopefully everybody's happy. Greetings to everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Sorry about
Sally,
the whole
excuse
DC
me.
connection. Yes.
We're having a bit of trouble hearing you. It's not so clear at this end. No.
Oh,
The problem is on your end. She's very clear.
Ah.
am I? How are we doing now? If I'm a little bit closer to the mic, is that any better?
It is a
Can you
bit
hear
better.
me?
Yes, it's a bit better. Yes, thank you.
All right. Do I need to speak slowly?
Yes.
Is it okay? I will speak slowly. So I want to talk about light in Buddhism. It is mostly symbolic, but when we get to ritual, it's definitely physical. And the part of light that comes to mind immediately for me is the identification of light in Buddhism with wisdom. And of course, here's this universal theme. I think it's pretty universal. Light associated with wisdom, the light that dispels ignorance. Ignorance is the big problem from the Buddhist point of view. So light is very important in that sense. And light can also be symbolized or represented in Buddhism by the idea of Buddha nature. Buddha nature means there is Buddhahood in each person. And what is Buddhahood? Wisdom and compassion. So the nature of a Buddha is inside of each person. That is our Buddha nature. And it is universal, no exceptions. Everyone, no matter how terrible their behavior, still within has this Buddha nature. And I'm going to try to share screen. So let's hope this works. Okay, let's see. Are we getting anywhere or not? What I really wanted to do was, okay. Is this working?
Yes, it's working.
Beautiful.
We'll see it.
Yeah, trying to get it. There we go. Even better. Okay, great. So Buddha nature in Buddhism is symbolized sometimes by the sun, but in East Asia, China, Japan, Korea, Vietnam, it's especially symbolized by the moon. And if you think about East Asian art, you'll probably realize there's an awful lot of pictures of the moon. And this theme of the moon shining on the water is also very prevalent. So the moon itself represents Buddha nature. Here we have a full moon, and this would represent the complete perfected Buddha nature, lacking nothing. And the moonlight here is reflected in the water. This is a very prominent symbol as well. Moonlight can be reflected in an ocean, something vast like the moon, or it can be represented also or reflected in just a drop of water. Even a drop of water can reflect the entirety of the moon. So this is all a metaphor of the vastness of Buddhahood, the wisdom of a Buddha reflected in an individual person or thing. And here we have a little quotation from a famous Zen master named Dogen. This in a way, when a person attains realization, it is like the moon reflecting on the water. So attaining realization means realizing your Buddhahood, because we may have the Buddhahood inside of us, the wisdom, the light, but that doesn't mean we're in touch with it. That doesn't mean it is acting and alive through us and our words and our actions. We have to make that real experientially. We have to make that knowledge our own. So when you attain realization, that's your realization of Buddhahood. And when that happens, the moon never becomes wet. The water is never broken. In other words, the moon, the Buddhahood, is not somehow distorted by the particular persons that it manifests in. And the water or the individual person is not somehow too small to reflect the entirety of the Buddhahood. Although it is a vast and great light, it reflects itself on a small amount of water, as we said. The whole moon and even the whole sky reflects on even a drop of dew on a blade of grass or a single tiny drop of water. This is a very famous saying by Japanese Zen master Dogen. So this is this universal reality of the immanence, the presence in us of what in other traditions, especially other mystical traditions, might call something like the divine present in us. Well, this is great, and obviously it's a great principle of hope in Buddhism. So this Buddha nature and light also represent hope. Buddhahood is actual in us already. However, there's also such a thing as clouds, to extend the metaphor. So the moon may be concealed a little, a lot, entirely, just a bit. The clouds are more or less the surface of the mind. So they're primarily ignorance and delusion. We just don't know who and what we are. We don't know our Buddhahood. We don't know the Buddhahood of others. We don't understand the true nature of things. We're quite confused. We practice in order to get the clouds to part. So Buddha nature is, on the one hand, our potential to achieve Buddhahood, which everyone has. And on the other hand, it is the fully realized actuality, the fact already of Buddhahood here. So it's very hopeful as a sort of an aspirational idea that we can all attain Buddhahood. And it's also very hopeful in the sense of it's a fundamentally optimistic understanding of the nature of human being. It's realistic in the sense that, yes, the clouds are here. We may have no inkling of ourselves as beings with wisdom, as beings with compassion. We may have and we may never behave like that, but still it's possible. And it's possible for anyone and everyone. And you never know when somebody may get a little glimpse. And I want to say that about wisdom as well. Of course, it comes from a meditation and so forth in Buddhism, but it also comes from life. It's experiential wisdom. And you get a sense of what we call insight. If you recall times when you're just having your normal interactions in life and suddenly you see something you never saw before and you understand it very differently, and it's sort of stunning. You're just stunned by what you all of a sudden see that's been there all along. That's an insight, and that's just a little, that's the clouds parting for just a moment, getting a little glimpse of something, and then you carry on. So very hopeful, very optimistic, but still realistic with the clouds. Now, when we come to iconography, you often see in Buddhist imagery a halo. And so here's just one example of this. This is a bodhisattva, a very enlightened being, who's got a halo. And I particularly like this one. It really actually means a lot to me. Of course, he's standing with his hands in Gasho. He's greeting other beings. And he is recognizing them as a Buddha to be, a future Buddha. And his name is the Bodhisattva never disparaging. So that means he never looks down on other people. He never thinks he's better. He fundamentally recognizes that all beings are equal and all beings are Buddhas in waiting, in a sense. So his story as he goes about the world, sort of greeting everyone with great respect and reverence. And sometimes people get really fed up with this and think he's acting like a fool and throw stones at him and all of this, but he never sways from recognizing others as Buddhas. So again, if we talk about hopefulness, this is one of the foundations in Buddhism for the idea of even social, political equality that should be recognized in law. And then the last thing I want to share, the physical light. This is one of the most popular rituals in Buddhism, lighting candles, offering light, fundamentally offering light to dispel the darkness. And this can be done by an individual or a group. You can light one candle, you can turn on a room full of lights or a field full if you're outdoors. It's an expression of reverence for the Buddha, devotion for the Buddha. It's also a sort of sharing in the idea of light dispelling darkness, wisdom dispelling ignorance, bringing that to mind, trying to participate in a little bit, perhaps deciding that one wants to try to offer one's own light as best that one can. So offering lights, I think in all Buddhist traditions, in all Buddhist countries and cultures, you find this is a very touching and meaningful practice. It's pretty universal. So that's what I wanted to share. So alone, hopefully the Buddhists did not mess things up for others.
No, Sally, the Buddhists came out looking like a religion. I can't see you. Oh, because you.
Sally, you need to unshare the screen.
Okay. Oops, there it is. There it is. But
good.
Very good.
Thank you, Sally. That was very rich. I appreciate the multidimensionality and the clear focus. Light is wisdom, and then its various secondary expressions and practical expressions. Thank you. I'd like to say some things from the Jewish perspective. And as I prepared my responses, I realized that it's really difficult to be presenting this, both because of the complexity of the story and the context, and especially for the second cycle about the applications. We'll get to the question of the applications then later. But I would say that we're gathered here today, and I'm sure Rabbi Beth will have some more things to say about this later. We're gathered here today in the context of celebrating the lights of Chanukah, and I want to point out two fundamental tensions that are very relevant to us thinking about light on the occasion of Chanukah in an interfaith context. One fundamental tension has to do between the martial and the spiritual dimensions of the festival. The festival starts out as a festival that commemorates a war and a victory on a war, and victory over the enemies. The story I imagine everyone knows. Temple polluted, taking over. Maccabees win a battle, purify the temple. The lights in the strictest sense evoke the lights of the temple. The plain sense of things, you're commemorating some combination of the military victory combined with its religious significance in the purification and reestablishment of the temple. But then, in fact, something happens in the Babylonian Talmud where the meaning is shifted. And instead of the martial aspect, there's a more spiritualized aspect with a story that is found only in the Talmud, where there was one flask of oil that was found pure to be lit after the temple was purified, that had enough oil in it to suffice for one day, and it lasted for 8 days, and therefore there's a miracle. And the miracle becomes not the victory, not the conquest, not even the purification of the temple, but this miracle of the flask of oil, where one day lasts 8. So there's potentially an anti-military streak here, but it's certainly a kind of spiritualization and a shift in meaning where this has taken over a large part of the significance of Chanukah. But in fact, Chanukah remains in a tension between these two extremes. The other aspect of a fundamental tension that characterizes the Feast of Chanukah, and I think is even more relevant to our gathering today, is between particular and universal. Now, all of Judaism is caught in this tension between particular and universal, but it's particularly the case, or universally the case, with regard to Chanukah, because Chanukah celebrates the fact that there's a we over them and we one. That's the basic dynamics. It starts with the kind of duality. How do you celebrate it? You light lights. Where do you light lights? You light on the street. So by putting the lights out on the street, even if later on they moved into the home, conceptually, you're lighting the outside. You're not lighting the inside. Now, lighting the outside means that you're spreading something out to others. So there's been a transformation between the others being those whom you have to overcome and conquer, to the fact that you're radiating to them. So then, in this sense, the particularity of our victory is transformed to universality of a message, of something that's then given over to others. And with that, as you can see, there's a correspondence between that shift and the shift in meaning of the military conquest to the spiritual victory. Because if you're lighting the outside, what are you doing? You're simply proclaiming the miracle that one flask of oil lasted for 8 days, and everybody who passes on the street has to know that miracle and clap. It's okay, but it's not thrilling. So you need to find some higher level of meaning that you're bringing out to others as well as to yourself. And there is where this whole notion of light opens up to a series of meanings. And it's striking, and I'm very glad that I get to do this by way of comment, that this follows on each of the thoughts that are my 3 co-panelists or 3 participants in the panel has mentioned, all relate to that. So I'm going to go through a quick presentation of several levels of what this light might mean. So the first and most basic level of what this light might mean has to do with the context, because if it started by religious persecution, where there was a decree, and there's various historical sources that depict the decree variously, and it's not important what exactly the scope of it was. But the point is, a foreign power prevents us from being faithful and fulfilling the covenantal commandments. So light is the ability to fulfill the commandments, which then gets extended more specifically to Torah. And here was very interesting that both William and Marcia refer to Scripture and to the message of Scripture, and the Scripture is light. Because Rambam, Maimonides, says that one of the things that the Greeks, Hellenists, did was to prevent us from studying Torah. So one of the associations of Chanukah has to do with lighting, which is therefore studying Torah. You can see how closely this dovetails with the previous presentations. So the message is teaching. Teaching is wisdom. But then there's a whole other level, and this touches back to what William said about holiness, but also as he's made that significant distinction between being and doing. And this in its own way touches also with Marcia's cosmic orientation of light. And much of the reflection on Chanukah relates to Genesis 1 and the tension of light and darkness in Genesis 1, and God bringing the light out of the darkness. So the Midrash says that when God, at the beginning, God saw there was light and darkness. The darkness was the deed of the wicked. The light was the deed of the righteous. And God, of course, prefers the deeds of the righteous to the deeds of the wicked. So light is how you act in a saintly way. But it becomes not just our battle, it becomes part of a cosmic battle of what the world is about and what God creates the world. God creates the world for the sake of light, in other words, for righteousness. That in turn then pushes us to the next level of meaning. And I think here, ultimately, all 3 speakers who came before me can agree on this with that parentheses issue of Buddhists and God. But ultimately, the light is God himself. That's why I highlighted, well, it was important to profile that and what William said, and it was important to see that and what Marcia said, and light is light of Buddhahood. So therefore, light is that fundamental spiritual reality by whatever way you name it. So ultimately, the light is God himself as he manifests through different expressions. So one way of saying that this is what comes through the temple. You light the lights of the temple, and in the temple, the light manifests, that's God's light. But there are traditions that are even more specific to say, Hasidic traditions that speak of the fact that the Hanukkah lights really are the light of God shining. And one particular configuration of that is goes back to Genesis 1. If you notice, Genesis 1 speaks of the light in creation. Day 1 is the light of creation. Day 4, God creates the sun and the moon. So what's the relation between the light of day 1 and the sun and moon of day 4? So the Midrash says that there was a hidden light. You can hear the echoes with Marcia's presentation. There's a hidden light. And this hidden light was hidden for the righteous in the future. So therefore, God couldn't reveal his full light. So we're using physical light here, but there's a spiritual higher light, which is that tension of day 1. And there's a Hasidic tradition that says when you light the lights of Hanukkah, what you see is the hidden light. Now, you can then make the connection between the hidden light, the cosmic light, the universal light, and therefore you can see how you can construct or realize the meaning of Hanukkah on these various levels between the physical light commemorating a particular miracle versus the spiritual light, universal light creation, which has these cosmic dimensions that are relevant to everyone. And interestingly, as this conversation goes, shows also the connection between what happens within Judaism and other traditions, all of which appeal to that same language, which is the language of light being the divine, finding expression of this concreteness. So there's a whole ladder of meanings that is associated with it. I'm going to stop here. I had 2 more points on my presentation. Maybe I'll come to it on the second round. But what I want to point then is therefore these basic dynamics, the scale of meaning, and the multiple points of connectivity with the other speakers, especially as you rise higher in that ladder of meaning. So, does anyone want to interrogate me because I actually spoke less than 7 minutes, or do I just move on to the second cycle? Okay, no comments. So let me then move to the question of the second cycle, and now this is going to become more challenging, because I think it's nice for us to come together and to talk about light and to have people with different religions doing so, but we're doing so in the context of war and terrible scenes of suffering on both sides, and in a situation where we can't just go for the spiritualized meaning of the day, because we're back in a situation of war and a struggle of righteousness. And therefore, how do you live Hanukkah, and how do you speak of Hanukkah in an interreligious context in the middle of war? This is a not simple task. So here's the question that I've asked everyone to speak of. In view of the above, what would it mean for this light to find expression under present circumstances in the Holy Land? In other words, each one of you is given an understanding. So what does that mean for us today, for those in the Holy Land or those talking to the Holy Land? What can we make of your understanding of light that would be relevant for our situation here today? So we go back to William. You're still on mute, William.
Yes. Let us go back to the symbolism of light. The symbolism is obviously universal. Light is symbol of life, of love, of peace, of joy, of holiness, and other values. We said it is symbolism of life, but in this period of time during a war, either in Ukraine, here in the Holy Land, there is a lot of killing. Many people passed away. They may have been killed atrociously. So there is the absence of light, since life is symbolized by light. Absence of love, because what causes a war is hatred. Hatred triggers violence. and violence becomes a war. And more violence begets more hatred, and more hatred begets more violence. Now, I'm speaking generally now. It is a reality which exists everywhere, also here. We cannot say that war is symbolism of love. We cannot say this, we lie. War is the fruit of hatred or the absence of love. Now, maybe the people of faith, we are people of faith. We are gathered here not to speak against the other, otherwise no need to interreligious dialogue. Here, we want to find another way to make peace without violence. How to reach this? Prayer is good. Fasting for this intention is good. But we have to do more, especially to teach the value of the respect of the others, the respect of the suffering of the others. In a war, we rejoice when the enemy suffers more, and it is reciprocal. The more my enemy suffers, I am happier. The more he enjoys, I suffer. This is war. But what we want is that we feel with the suffering of the others. Many people were compassionate with the suffering of Israelis on the 10th of October. This is good. We have to be compassionate. Many Jews are compassionate with the suffering of Gazawi people, especially the innocent children and women and civilians who had their houses destroyed and who don't find a reason for the suffering, because suffering seems absurd. Why an innocent should suffer? He didn't commit a sin which deserves punishment. So how can we change the mentality from closeness on myself, only my own suffering counts, the suffering of the others don't count. One, I consider myself right and I demonize the others. How to change this mentality where everyone, every human being was created on the image of God, and we have to respect the image of God, even in my enemy. I know that during war, there is no time to think of these values. They are absent. But we have to remind ourselves and others of these values. Be compassionate with others, even with my enemy, and also to suffer with the others, especially the innocent, and not to demonize the others, because there is goodness in the other. They were created at the image of God. And finally, I conclude here, how to reduce the hatred. On the social media, if we open the social media, we read a lot of hatred in the blogs, a lot. How can people of faith change this? There is a long way in front of us. Thank you.
Thank you, William. If I had to take 3 minutes that summed up the entire purpose of the series we've been doing for the last 2 months, it would be the words you just shared with us. Thank you. Marcia?
Yes, thanks everyone, and thanks Alon for offering me this this chance to speak. And actually, we're really in dialogue here. I think hopefully we're in a multifaceted exchange of ideas. Of course, we all share the idea that the wonderful, illumination, hope, and compassion that our traditions offer with regard to light could shine forth on those who are hurting in the context of this current war. But I'd like to offer some critiques that come from both perhaps a postmodern deconstruction of the idea of light versus darkness and a mystical one that I think Alon was hinting at as a resolution between the inherent particularity and universality of Hanukkah, or, you know, shared across our traditions, the way that we envision light. So perhaps some of you are familiar, or at least I was struck by a critique of modern Western enlightenment. So when we say enlightenment, of course, spiritual or Buddhist enlightenment is deconstructing the self. But Western enlightenment is often the privileging of a Western knowledge project, right? Which echoes through racial and colonialist otherings of people who do not share that civilized and enlightened set of values. So we are the light. So in our particularities, we represent the light, whoever we may be, and the other side is dark, black, confused, uncivilized, sinful, chaotic, and so on. If we look to our mystical traditions, we see, and I think Alon was alluding to some of this in Kabbalah and elsewhere, that kind of primordial absence of light, Ein Sof and Sufism, you have the black light, because after all, there are many ways of appreciating darkness. I mean, think of Chinese philosophy and sort of the primordial chaos that then comes together into yin and yang, infinite potential, and all of those other elements, rather than darkness always being evil, frightening, sinful. So particularity and exclusivity, even light mentioned in the Quran. So there's a Quranic verse, I'll just read the translation. They want to extinguish the light of Allah with their mouths, but Allah will only allow the perfection of his light. Now, that could be read in a universal sense, but it can also be read in a supersessionist sense, like we have the light and whatever went before, right, has been distorted and we have the exclusive light. Or even the idea of being a light to the nations, which I actually see as a beautiful idea. You know, I love that idea, I embrace that idea. But, you know, that's a very heavy responsibility, right? That's a high bar. I think Alon was also alluding to this, that you're sharing the light, or are you exclusive in your light? So the Quran says God created diversity, ethnic diversity, religious diversity, so that the peoples of the world could compete with each other in doing good, right? So that diversity is part of the divine plan that should be celebrated, and we should see the light in the other. By the way, there's been a couple, it's never been named, but I see a couple of associations here to the ancient Persian traditions. And, you know, in postmodern theory, if we say Manichaean, it means something bad, right? It means binary, dualistic, us and them, the good and the evil, the light and the dark. But actually that some of those Persian traditions and their appreciation of light have been inspirational in all of the Abrahamic traditions, so we also have these, you know, in the Abrahamic side, this share. You know, can we redeem ourselves from the binary and have a way to uphold and know the other? So maybe again to say to see that divine within the other. So I'll end there.
Thank you. That gives a very specific path to the general intention spelled out by Bishop Shomali. and Sally.
Thank you. I think what I'm going to say has a lot of overlap with both the preceding speakers. When I try to put the first part of my presentation about Buddha nature and also the clouds in the context of responding to this challenging question, what immediately comes to mind is there's a lot of clouds in the Middle East these days. As Bishop Shamali said, particularly hatred and also from a Buddhist point of view. And I think as Marcia Hermanson was saying, also the illusion and ignorance, including these ideas of, there's the good, that's our side, there's the bad, that's the other side kind of thinking. So these are fundamental this is one of the fundamental delusions in Buddhism. So Buddhism may seem idealistic, but they do get practical from time to time. I'm just want to make sure you get this word. I'm trying to put into the chat the term skillful means. So skillful means is something that you see in Buddhism, which is basically trying to make practical all these things that we're talking about. So skillful means is that wisdom and compassion, putting it into action in your words and deeds. So how do you do that? And of course, that's not so easy, but skillful means, I would say, operates in terms of the world as we know it, which from a Buddhist point of view, just like a Hindu point of view, it's basically karma, which is to say cause and effect. So looking at the world in terms of cause and effect. So, and the metaphor is sowing seeds. So if you sow an apple seed, you get an apple tree, not plums and mangoes and whatnot. If you behave in a hateful way, you are sowing seeds that will definitely grow into fruit that violence, again, as Bishop Shamali was saying, violence, suffering, misery. It's just going to happen. And there's a lot of karmic seeds that have been sown. And it just, there is nothing that's going to turn that around. Instantly, you've got to deal with all of these seeds that have been sown and the present reality. So just for an example, I think it's an example of what Professor Hermanson was talking about as an example of skillful means in this situation. What comes to mind for me actually is Elijah is a good example of skillful means. Yes, we have the effort to take the divisions among humankind, which are weighty divisions of religion and nationality and our group versus the other group kind of thinking, to take these divisions and make one's best effort to not break down the divisions. So this is sort of like the entirety of the moon within just the drops of water. It doesn't destroy the water. So the divisions, it's not about saying, oh, they're not real or something like that. They're there. So within those divisions, how do you shine the light of wisdom and caring and love and compassion? Well, you look for some commonalities. You try to build friendship. So Elijah's whole project of building friendship across the religions, this is a really good example of skillful means. It doesn't turn the world around overnight, but you're sowing those karmic seeds. The more the better. The more people you get engaged, the better. You sow these karmic seeds. And once karmic seeds are planted, they do develop, they do mature, they do bear fruit. We may not, see, in fact, we will not see the full bearing fruit of what you start with the karmic deeds, words, actions that you plant with your life, with your own actions. But they're planted, and they are nudging the world in the direction that you want to go. And the direction you want to go. It's the world that you do see with your wisdom and light and compassion. You can see that world. And so you do all of these kinds of actions that are of the nature of that light and help to further that light to be able to be manifest. So that's skillful means. And, the door is very wide open to creativity in that area, but it's got to have that base in compassion, love, kindness, wisdom.
Thank you, Sally. I'm very moved by that. And you spoke earlier about wisdom and hope. I believe you offered Nami the hope of a reincarnation in a Buddhist life next time around through the application of these good karmic seeds. So thank you for the welcome to the club that spells out. I want to say a few things from the Jewish perspective just to conclude this cycle. And I think Peter is going to insist that we conclude the whole panel at that point. So how to apply what we spoke to these situations of war, I think really relates to this ladder of meanings that we spelled out earlier, and the particularity of the Hanukkah story that starts as a story of war, and then its higher aspects have to do with the universal light, the light of God, the light of Messiah. And this is particularly complicated now because we have to practice this when in fact there is a battle that is undertaken with the consciousness that the good are fighting the bad. Now, I don't want to say that very clearly that the Israelis are all good and the Arabs or the Gazans are all bad. That's not the point I'm making. Clearly, everything is always more complicated, and unfortunately, Israel also has some negative karma that's picked up along the way in the course of war. But that's not the point. The point is that the intentionality and the self-awareness is one of fighting evil through this war, through what found expression. And therefore, there's a very concrete sense that you maintain the original context. But I think the spiritual challenge for us is really to replicate within ourselves the whole history of evolution of the meaning of Chanukah. So it starts on the most physical and concrete way, historically, with the war. And then it rises to that higher spiritual meaning, which means we have to go through that spiritual process as well. So that means the following. That means that we, as warriors, and as William said earlier, people may be too busy while there's war, but people on the war front are supported by people in the larger community. And therefore, people in the larger community, and each one of us individually has the task of bringing that light of wisdom and transformation into themselves. So the battle has to be not just a physical battle, it has to be a spiritual battle, which is a battle of conquering the darkness within ourselves. And that's everything that all three of you spoke about, the wisdom and the love and the compassion and the peace. You have to grow them within yourself. And then when that takes place, then you don't act out of hatred. You maintain awareness of the other. You maintain compassion of the other. Even as the war, one of the biggest challenges is to maintain compassion for the other, even in the situation of war. That is the compassion. That is the challenge. So that is the spiritual transformative process that higher wisdom invites us to undertake within this ladder of meaning of Chanukah. So our challenge is at this point to know that at the same time that we're fighting evil outwardly, we also have to transform ourselves internally. And if you look at the last newsletter that we shared, I shared my opinion that things that unfolded on October 7th really have to also do with the evil that's inside us, the evil that's in the people that has to be purified and that occasioned these situations. So therefore, that light and wisdom and God himself is transformative, not in the sense of we over them and overpowering them with power, but rather, even as the physical war goes on, it has to be conducted as a war for the overcoming of good over evil, and that war has to be both fought internally and fought in our consciousness, so we recall the cosmic roots of the light, the creation roots of the light, the fact that ultimately, as one of you said, I think Sally said, there's always good in everyone, and to see that good divine everywhere, and to fight for the recognition of the good and the divine, even while we have to practically, maybe in terms of skillful means, engage in warfare. I think that is the big challenge, especially for us as Jews. And I think this is also where we can identify this interesting commonality here across the religions. I was told I had to finish now, so I'm gonna give the microphone over to the Fuchs Center. I think I saw that Rajiv Merhotra, who worked very closely with the Dalai Lama in interfaith, joined our session, which is a great joy for me. And there's several other people I haven't been able to acknowledge just because of my screen has served me for note-taking and other things, but I want to say hello to him and to all those who have joined for the first time or for the innumerable time. And with that, move to Rabbi Beth and the lighting.
Thank you so much. Such wisdom, such fantastic wisdom. And we're going to continue. Tali, could I ask you to remove the spot from everybody except for Rabbi Beth here, who's on my my camera and we're going to hand over.
Yeah,
to-
put us into darkness.
There we go.
Thank you everyone so much. I'm just gonna do something slightly different before we light the Chanukah here. I'm just gonna share a few words about Chanukah and a sort of a relevant religious message that I think it has to offer for this difficult time that we are living through. So as I'm sure you all know, the basic story of Chanukah is, I'm going to share the Chanukah side of it rather than the military side of it, in terms of the topic of light over dark, and that the went into the temple to find it desecrated, and they found this tiny jug of oil, and they lit with it, and it was only thought, and it lasted for 8 nights, which is like the basic story that everyone knows. But I think it can actually serve as a very powerful religious model for what to do when things are dark and scary, which is that it's kind of crazy that they lit with this tiny bit of oil. They had this tiny pacha shemen, and instead of saving it for cooking or something that they might really need, or thinking we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, they actually chose on that first night to light the menorah. That's kind of maybe a bit of a reckless thing to do, but I think that actually there's some real wisdom in that for what we do when things are difficult. And Rabbi Ephraim Chaim Halevi Klein says it better than me, so I'm just going to read what he says. He's a 20th century rabbi, and he says that immediately after the Hasmoneans found the jar of pure oil, they lit with it. They did not think about what would follow. Rather, they threw their lot in with God and had faith that if God had provided them with the oil today, they should light with it today and fulfill the mitzvah today, and not worry about what will be tomorrow. And it's because of this faith and trust that they merited the miracle. From that same oil, they were able to light for all 8 days. And then he adds that the miracle of Chanukah comes to teach us a lesson for all generations. When a person gets the opportunity to do a mitzvah, to do a good deed, or to give to charity, he should not worry about tomorrow. And he should not say, if I do this now, I won't have the energy to do something else tomorrow. I think this is actually like a really obvious thing when you've heard someone say it, which is like that the Hasmoneans did something kind of crazy, but there's something actually it sort of is, that is what faith is. Faith is that you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. No one knows. The world is a really scary place, as we've all seen, and all you can do is do the thing that you are presented with in that moment. And that's exactly what the Hasmoneans did. They didn't say, well, if we light with it today, then we're not going to have anything to light with tomorrow. They just said, this is what we have. We're presented with this now. All we can do is light with it. And just to note that, as far as I can find, Rabbi Klein is the first person to say this explicitly about Chanukah, and I actually think that's because it's so obvious. It didn't need to be said before, and it took someone in the 20th century to spell it out, because actually it was it's such an ingrained part of the miracle of Chanukah. And I think that there's so much in the Jewish tradition that fits in with this idea. I'm just going to share one more thing. I know we're in a rush, but I'm just going to, which is that I've always been struck that the Shulchan Aruch, which is this central code of all of Jewish law, the very first law in the Shulchan Aruch is that in the whole thing, it's enormous. It says a person should strengthen themselves like a lion to get up in the morning to serve his creator. It is he who awakens the dawn. And I think that there's so many examples in the Jewish tradition, but this is a similar message that the message of Chanukah gets, which is all we can do is face the day that we are given and the small things that we are given, and to try our best to to tackle what we're able to and not be overwhelmed by the enormity of what am I going to do tomorrow? What does the future hold? But my prayer for us is that we can channel the Hasmoneans and when they lit that tiny bit of oil and just do what we can in anything that is presented to us in any given moment, and not to fret about what tomorrow has to bring. Thank you so much. Pass over.
Wow, aren't we're so privileged to have such wisdom shared with us. We are now going to move to the candle lighting, and we're delighted that Hannah is here. As you know, she's a absolute stalwart of praying together in Jerusalem, and we're going to try something. I hope this works. We've been using a microphone which is now on a short cord and can't be moved with us, and the candles, and Alon mentioned this, they're at a window to put the light outside. And so we can't take our microphone with us, so we're going to try and hope that a microphone from this computer is adequate to hear Hannah lighting the candle, and we'll return to the microphone for some singing after the candle lighting. So we could all go, Hannah, if you'd lead us, and I'll take the computer. And then first and last. Oh dear. We're going to have a keko, and I don't know a solution. They said no. If somebody knows how to unplug the microphone, I'll try that. Just unplug the microphone. Yes, so I've got these little room here with the record and everything, with the blessings and with the words of our source, and anyone that's
Rita, there are two microphones there. There are two microphones and they're echoing one another. And we on the Zoom are getting a terrible echo. Make certain you only have one microphone in them there. Still getting the echo. Only one microphone can be open on your end.
Can you hear me? Can you hear? No, they can't.
Yes.
Oh, you can. Excellent.
Not properly. It's not working properly.
Now, have you on the Zoom? Oh. Let's see, let's unmute this and see whether they can hear us. Can you hear us? Okay, we're not. Who is it who touched the, can you put this back on, the microphone? Thank you. I don't know, I don't think the microphone's working. Hello? Sally, can you hear us?
Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay. Anna, and I.
So, I'll have you sing. And then, so maybe
Guys, can you come and join us around here? We're going to sing a couple of songs. You can be both sides of the table. Just come and join us.
this is going to be the music. There's going to be 2 songs of Jewish tradition, and then Mohammed is going to play the oud.
Can you
So
come and
please
join us?
come and join us.
Guys, come and join us. Come around here. Mohammed? Come and join us.
Okay, come into the, come.
There we go.
We're going to start with a song from the prayer that we say specifically on Chanukah, Al Hanisim, for Al Ha Furqan, for the miracles and for the salvation, which our Holy Land needs.
Now, our second and final song is going to be Ocho Candelika, which is you know it? Sing with, sing. Please, come over. Ocho Candelika is a Ladino song which was written in the 1980s by Flori Jagoda. And it's a great song and you'll be able to follow. In fact, if you can look it up on Spotify, that would be great. Get the words and then you can sing along and you'll even learn how to count from 1 to 8. From 1 to 8 in Ladino. Maybe. Let's do it once more. Okay. Ocho candelas para mí. Ocho candelas para mí. Oh, la candelica, 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 ocho candelica, situ candelica. Oh, ocho candelicas para mí. You are great. Thank you so much. Happy Chanukah. Mohammed, come here, stop with Hannah. Come and sit here. And I just want to say that, sorry, I'll put myself in the microphone. We're going to finish, as we often do, with Mohammed playing the oud. And we know for the people on Zoom, the music doesn't work very well. But Mohammed being here means so much to us. He's part of our Praying Together family. We appreciate him so much, being a constant Muslim presence in our gathering. And it really does make a difference. We really, I cannot tell you from my heart, Mohammed, how much we love having you here. And I also want to just say that for those of you who are in Jerusalem, at 5 p.m. on Tuesday, 5 p.m. on Tuesday at St. Andrew's Church, we are partnering Elijah Interfaith Institute, Praying Together in Jerusalem, the Rainbow Group for Jewish Christian Dialogue. We're partnering with Rabbis for Human Rights and several other organizations for interfaith prayers for this time. And I hope that those of you who are in Jerusalem at 5 p.m. will join me at St. Andrew's Church to pray together for peace. We need it. And Mohammed will be there, Hannah will be there, Praying Together in Jerusalem will be well represented. The Sisters of Zion, who couldn't come out tonight, will be joining us there. And we really hope that it's a good turnout. And then we come together again on Zoom next week for continuing our series of Praying Together with maintaining or upholding the dignity of the human person, particularly in times of crisis. We will be continuing those gatherings. I know that many of you on the Zoom are in that Praying Together. I'm inviting those of you who are not regulars to join us on Zoom. As I mentioned earlier, that will be at 4:30 next week. The two Chanukah events will be 4:30, and then we Christmas special. Just as tonight was a Chanukah special, we will be having a Christmas special to continue meeting together. So Mohammed, I'm going to turn over to you. We can turn the lights back on if you like to get more light back here. And then those of you who are here at Fuchsberg, we will enjoy some Chanukah refreshments. And those of you who are on Zoom, I'm afraid you're going to have to refresh yourselves. And I wish you all a wonderful, wonderful week and hope to see you all next week and praying together in Jerusalem. Thank you very much. So while Mohammed continues to play for us here, Sally, you might want to say goodbye to everyone on Zoom. Thank you to our brilliant teachers. Thank you for everyone for being a participant. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mohammed.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much and enjoyed it very